Start broadcast now.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi,
Hello.
everybody. Oh, sorry.
That's all right. Hi, everybody. This is Charlene O'Hanlon. I'm the moderator for today's DevOps.com webinar, Scaling Enterprise DevOps with CloudBees. And thank you very much for joining us today. We do have a great webinar today, and Cal is obviously very interested in getting started right away. So I'm going to go through housekeeping stuff very quickly for you. First of all, today's webinar is being recorded, so please feel free if you miss all or part of today's webinar, you will be able to see it on demand or excuse me, in about 24 hours. You will receive a link via email. It'll also be available on the DevOps.com website, so feel free at any time after about this time tomorrow to check it out if you want. Also, we will be taking questions from the audience near the end of the presentation. So if you have a question for our presenter at any time during the webinar, please feel free to go ahead and submit your questions, and then we'll take a few minutes at the end of the webinar to go through those questions. We also do have one quick poll at the end of the presentation, so stick around for that as well. Okay, great. So our presenter today is Cal Vissa, who is the Senior Product Manager at CloudBees. Cal, welcome to today's webinar.
Thank you. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Why don't we start by you just telling the audience a little bit about yourself, and then you can just go right on into your presentation.
Sounds good. Thank you for having me here. I'm really excited to do this webinar. Good day, good morning, afternoon, wherever you are. I am a product manager at CloudBees, and I represent a product called the CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise, which is what I will be talking about during this webinar. I've been at CloudBees for a little over a year and a half now. Prior to me joining CloudBees, I was running the DevTools team or continuous delivery team at Walmart Labs. I've been involved in the CI/CD space for a few years now, you know, this is an area I really love, super excited to be a part of CloudBees and you know, changing the world from a CI/CD perspective. So without further ado, let me jump right in. What I'll be talking about today is to essentially talk about how enterprises can use CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise to really scale their CI/CD needs and embracing the DevOps philosophy. So with that, let me get into the slide deck. So like I said, what's really happening in the industry right now is this demand for you know, CD, continuous delivery, you know, the need for enterprises to deliver software fast and with high quality, and really embracing the DevOps culture, right? So really enabling enterprises to, you know, to transform their business into a really agile model, right? So with that, you can see that, you know, there's a lot of, you know, trends that we're seeing in the marketplace. You know, you look at all the analysts here, you know, they're all, you know, essentially, you know, they've got studies and reports out there that say that, you know, if an enterprise is not adopting continuous delivery or a DevOps mindset, you're going to be, you know, you're going to be left behind. Your competitors are going to eat you, right? So with that, you know, we've done, you know, we've looked at more studies out in the field, and we've seen that, you know, from a recent study, we've noticed that about 65% of enterprises today that, you know, you know, this poll has reached out to, you know, want to focus on, you know, CI and CD and faster time to market and better quality for their products are the two main, you know, asks, if you will, from these enterprises, right? So given that, how can we at CloudBees, how do we help these enterprises? Where do we fit in? Well, so our main you know, I guess value proposition here is to enable enterprises to do continuous delivery right, by really focusing on enterprise Jenkins, right? We want enterprises to essentially utilize Jenkins and really use that to really transform their business in the software, agile, really quick to, quick software delivery space, right? And there are 4 key pillars that we offer, for enterprises. We really focus on we enable enterprises to set up their enterprise Jenkins at scale. We offer manageability solutions for the enterprise Jenkins cluster. We have provided solutions to allow enterprises to to set up their own security or IT compliance standards for their Jenkins cluster. And finally, we offer world-class 24/7 support for for Jenkins, essentially for enterprise Jenkins. Over the past couple of years, we, the product team, have reached out to quite a few enterprises, quite a few customers, and we've taken your feedback, and we've essentially taken all of your inputs and have fed that back into our product. And as a result, I think our product has become much better. So in this last year, over the past year, all of this feedback that we've received from customers just like you have enabled us to essentially come up with and identify some key personas. So our understanding the personas is very critical in ensuring that we're building the right product for you, right? Because every persona needs or is looking for something unique or something different from the product. So like a developer, what she wants from the product could be different from what a product owner might want, or what an engineering manager might want, or what a shared services team member might want, right? So our goal over this past year has been, in talking to several customers, identifying key personas within an enterprise, and providing personalized solutions for each of these personas. The last persona on the right that you see, the shared services manager, for those who might not know what that is. We're seeing a trend right now where enterprises are centralizing, or they're coming up with a centralized DevOps team, if you will. Or we're calling them the shared engineering services team. So these guys are they're responsible for for providing developer productivity tools, like, let's say, from Jenkins to Artifactory or Nexus to GitHub, and several other tools to enable the development teams to deliver software faster and with higher quality, right? So that's the shared services team member, right? So once we've identified the personas, we also started to look at some of their key problems, right? What kind of problems do are these guys kind of encountering on a day-to-day basis, right? So for the shared services manager, and we're going to call him Simon, for him, the problem is he needs to be able to set up a reliable, multi-tenanted, easy to manage CD as a service platform to accelerate software delivery, but it also has to conform to their to an enterprise's quality and security standards, right? So real one-touch, like low-touch, out-of-the-box, easy provisioning. Those are the kinds of capabilities that Simon's looking for to set up this enterprise-grade CI/CD cluster, right? And the de facto choice for that is has been Jenkins, right? Another persona is we call her Penny. Think of Penny as within an enterprise, you've got several say departments or or project teams, and maybe each one each of those teams has their own DevOps engineer or a build and release engineer, for example. And Penny is the one who is really the CI or the CD expert on that team, right? So she's the one who is really looking out for new tooling, She wants to make sure that her project team can deliver software fast. And again, she is primarily the one who, is probably looking at setting up a Jenkins master, setting up jobs, setting up pipelines, setting up templates for those pipelines, maybe looking for specific plugins for her project team. So she's the one who's really doing a lot of the heavy lifting from a Jenkins perspective for her team. And she wants the ability to quickly debug and report on, on job failures or pipeline failures. And she also has to ensure that her project team is conforming to the enterprise software standards that Simon has set up, right? So Simon and Penny work very close to, together. Another persona, we've got the developer persona here, Ada, as we call her. She essentially is, she, really wants the tools to get out of her way, right? So she, her main goal is, hey, my job is to essentially deliver software with high quality. I want the tools to be reliable. I don't want any bottlenecks. I don't want to be waiting for capacity. I don't want, things to fail and, I have to spend, hours and days even trying to debug, what went wrong. So she wants, a very easy to use, tool set that can enable her to deliver software with high quality and fast, right? Finally, we've got the engineering manager persona. We're calling him Ernest. And for him, his whole, problem statement is around, hey, I want to get insights into how my teams are performing. I've got this mandate from, my CTO or my CIO, where all development teams have to get into this agile mode. We need to embrace DevOps. We need to embrace CI/CD, and I want to see how my teams are performing, right? Like if certain pipelines are taking longer and my releases are getting delayed as a result, I want to see why that's happening, right? I want to be able to pinpoint where the bottlenecks are, and give, I want that feedback coming back to me so I can take action, right? So I want actionable insights from the product, right? So, I've kind of laid out some key personas that we've talked to. I've talked about some key problems that, each of them, have, and what they really want out of this, this shared, enterprise-wide, CD as a service solution, right? So given this setup, I want to talk about CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise, how we solve this, all of these problems, right? So a quick readout of what's written here. CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise solves the automation needs of organizations that need scalability, security, manageability, and resiliency, right? And all of this is built on a cloud-native architecture. I'm going to use the acronym CJE here just to, shorten it. But CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise, or CJE, is the solution that we're providing to enterprises to solve, the problems that I just laid out for these different personas. So it offers personalized solutions for each of these personas. I want to essentially, given that brief introduction to CJE, I want to do a little bit of a deep dive and talk about what's underneath the covers, and kind of walk you through how CJE provides some of these benefits to these personas. So in this diagram here, on the left, you see, I've picked a sample, 3 personas here, and the value that each of them get out of the product. And in the middle, with the block diagram, you can see some of the internal components of CJE. So this is both a value prop as well as a semi-technical diagram here. Like we call this the architecture diagram. So very quickly, I'm going to start from the left. The shared services team members, what they will get out of CJE is turnkey provisioning. They can essentially, download the product, fire up the CLI, run a single command, and they can set up the cluster, your enterprise Jenkins cluster, either on-premise or on the cloud. And we support a whole bunch of runtimes that you can see there in the icons. and it's turnkey, right? One command, it sets up the whole thing for you, right? And from that point on, the shared services team member can essentially open it up to their project teams and say, hey, you know what, come on board, start using it. So moving up this, moving up the list there, the project team or the penny persona that I just talked about, for her, once Simon's team has set up this, this CJE, the Jenkins Enterprise Cluster, it's all self-service for her at that point. So she can log in to the cluster. She can start to onboard her teams really quickly with one click, and I'll show that in a bit. And she can start to download and install plugins that she needs for her team. So it's exactly what she wants. She doesn't want to depend on Simon to do everything for her. It's truly self-service for Penny. And finally, for the developer, the ADA persona, she's really getting a CD as a service solution for her. She can check in her code. She can set up. She can create pipeline as code. She can create a Jenkins file, check that into her repo, and she has the the cluster already set up that can essentially start to run those pipelines, right? It can automatically provision agents for you. She doesn't have to wait for Simon to provision hardware for masters, for agents. All of that is automatically done by the product out of the box, right? So that's the value that the the personas on the left will get out of the product. So let me spend a minute or two just quickly running through some key components in the product. In the middle, you see, the main components. That's the application layer of CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise. You've got the CloudBees Operations Center, which is your single pane of glass view into your entire cluster. That will give you, insights into how your cluster is performing. You can connect masters. You can connect agents. You get all of these capabilities in the Operations Center. And then you've got your, Enterprise Jenkins masters and Jenkins agents. And CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise today also ships with an analytics component that is also bundled with the product. And all of this entire application layer, the CloudBees Operations Center, masters, agents, and analytics, all of these are running as Docker containers on the infrastructure tier. So at the bottom where you see the VMs, that point, that layer is what we call as the infrastructure layer. So CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise has two layers. You've got the infrastructure layer and you've got the application layer. And like I said, the app layer is the one that you see in the middle there. And the app layer, all the Jenkins instances, whether it's the Ops Center, master, agents, they're all running as Docker containers. And the infrastructure tier is the one that is provisioning the infrastructure on your different runtimes, whether it's on-premise or on the cloud. And you could run CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise in two ways, actually. You can, for when a shared services team member wants to provision a CloudBees Jenkins cluster, he will have the option of running it in two modes. Mode one is, hey, you know what? I want this, complete out-of-the-box experience. I want the CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise product to provision the hardware for me, to provision the infrastructure layer, and then install the app layer on top. Or, he could say, hey, you know what? I've already, got hardware provisioned. I've already got my VMs provisioned. I just need the product to run and install the application layer on top of it, right? So both models are supported, right? And at the bottom, I've called out some key capabilities that the product supports today. Right from elastic scalability, multi-tenancy, to templating your pipeline. So maybe the Simon persona can create a templatized pipelines that can be used by the project team, the Penny persona or the Ada persona, who's the developer essentially. They can take these templatized pipelines and they can extend it. And also, given that the app layer, is basically containerized, they're all running as Docker containers. You could even, the product even allows you the flexibility to bring your own Docker templates for your Jenkins master or your Jenkins agents, right? So that's another really cool capability in the product. And then finally, it also has, monitoring and alerting and role-based access control for, from a security compliance perspective, right? And I'll deep dive into some of these key capabilities right after this. So I want to do, like I said, I want to do a deep dive on some of these key capabilities. So starting with the main theme around CJE, CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise, when we launched this product, and we actually launched this product back in February of this year. Prior to that, actually, this product was has been in production for over a year actually, and prior to us calling this the CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise, the product was called the Private SaaS Edition. Some of you might have already heard of that name. But when we launched this this CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise, our main goal was to essentially hit this theme around enterprises should be able to go from check-in to production in about an hour or less, right? Meaning that we want the tool to get out of the way, right? So you want the developers to be able to check in their code, and you don't want the tool to introduce any hurdles, right? The tool should be super easy to use, and the different personas that I talked about, they should be able to get their job done really, really quickly, right? So one of the key underpinnings for this theme is what we call as the distributed pipeline architecture. So the architecture for CJE, the diagram that I just showed, we've given that a theme. We're calling that architecture the distributed pipeline architecture. What does that mean? It really, what we wanted to do was, we wanted to architect the product where, once you've set up this shared CD as a service solution, it needs to be multi-tenanted from the get-go. So, you've got multiple teams that want to use the shared cluster, and you want them to essentially achieve, create pipelines and deliver software really, really fast. And you want them to not get, trampled on one another, right? You want this to be, you want a level of isolation. You want to introduce a level of security, authorization, authentication that will let them essentially, you can essentially think of each project team having their own CI/CD workspace, if you will, on the shared cluster, right? And the distributed pipeline architecture, is how we, have managed to get that done, right? So now I'm going to, move into, some really, important capabilities that you will get with the CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise, starting with the Jenkins Operations Center, or the JOC for short. And I touched upon this briefly on the architecture slide. But with the Jenkins Operations Center, this is your main interface to to the cluster, to CJE. This is your single pane of glass into how your cluster is performing. You get access to the bundled analytics in the product today. You can see how your masters are performing. There's a whole bunch of capabilities that the Jenkins Operations Center gives you today. This is our main manageability solution for enterprises today. So the Jenkins Operations Center allows you to manage your and also operate your your Jenkins cluster on a day-to-day basis. Another key capability in the product today is what we call as the CloudBees Assurance Program, or CAP for short. The CloudBees Assurance Program, it really is think of this as guardrails for an enterprise from an upgrade perspective, right? So one of the key problems we have heard from customers over and over, and these are both Jenkins users as well as enterprise users, one of their main concerns has been around upgrading their masters, right? And one of the primary reasons for that is around the plugins. I've installed a whole bunch of plugins. I'm really, I'm afraid that if I upgrade my master, my plugins, that I've installed may not play nice with the new version. So that's something we've heard over and over. And that's why we have introduced the CloudBees Assurance Program. And the CAP program is only available for enterprise Jenkins users. And the CAP program acts as a guardrail, like I said. It ensures that the plugins that you've installed are compatible with the new, Jenkins Master, Enterprise Jenkins Master versions that that the CloudBees puts out on a regular basis. So and I really encourage you, if you've not, spent time kind of understanding what the CloudBees Assurance Program is, feel free to reach out to us. This is a very, very key capability that we've introduced in the product. So moving on to another very, very important capability in the product today is around scale. And that's one of the main topics of discussion today in this webinar. And this is a a quick snapshot that I put together. We did a demo of how CJE can scale to any workloads that an enterprise can throw at it. And back at last year's Jenkins World, we did a demo on stage with the keynote presentation where we showed that you can essentially run a humongous amount of workloads on your CJE cluster. So we got this product to scale up to 2,000 masters running 10,000 executors on a little over 300 virtual machines. So scaling your CJE absolutely hits scalability on the head. So whether you want to scale your cluster, you can scale the cluster as big or as small as you want, and you can do that elastically in the product today, right? So this is a very, very important capability of the product. CJE also has built-in monitoring and alerting out of the box, and you can see in this example that I've shown here, you can actually start to get alerts for the the infrastructure layer that is running your Jenkins instances, right? So you can get insights into how your those VMs that are running your masters or agents, if they're getting pegged at at CPU, if they're running out of disk space, if they're getting pegged on the RAM side. So they're continuously being monitored, and the alerts get sent to you. And you could even create a job where those alerts get sent to, say, something like a Slack, for example, if you're using that, right? So you can get alerted that way, right? Another key capability in the product today is you have the ability to take automated backups of your data. So let's say you've got you're an enterprise, you've got a whole bunch of enterprise Jenkins masters. You can now you have the capability to essentially take regular backups. You can store that say in the cloud, say at something like an S3, and let's say you want to migrate your master from, say, on-premise to the cloud. You can even restore that data back into your new master, right? So you're moving your master from one location to another. You can you can take a backup, and then you can restore that data into your new master, and all of that is automated. Many enterprises today are moving to Docker, right? Docker is becoming a de facto standard, in many enterprises. So Docker is being used heavily, and we've heard this, asked from several customers. Hey, we're using Docker, and we're actually, using Docker with Jenkins quite heavily. We've got our own, Docker images that we want to use for our Jenkins masters and Jenkins agents, but we've got a private Docker registry. So maybe, they're using something like Artifactory or Nexus as a private Docker registry. Do you support that? And the answer is yes. CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise does support your private Docker registry, and you can use your own Docker templates for your masters and agents. Another important ask, and actually I talked about this as as one of the key problem statements for the Simon persona, for the shared services team. They want a, a low-touch, resilient, and shared CD as a service cluster, right? So, high availability is super critical for several enterprises, right? And one of the most important features in CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise is, this auto-healing aspect. Given that the application layer, all the Jenkins instances, whether they're masters or the operations center or agents, all of those are running as Docker containers. And CJE has a built-in capability where in the event any one of those containers were to die, we can automatically provision another Docker container instantly, and we can essentially move your workload from your previous container to the new one, right? So you don't need to have so the amount of hand holding that you would need to do for the product can come down significantly now with CJE. And then this feature here that I'm talking about is going to be specific to AWS. So if you're an enterprise and you want to run the product on AWS, the product does support setting up the cluster across multiple availability zones. So you get your, you can really increase your HA, SLA as a result, right? And again, if you are an enterprise that want to host the product on AWS, but you've got private VPC or a very highly kind of clamped down VPC, if you will, a lot of firewall settings and whatnot, walled off VPC, whatever you want to call that. The product supports that as well, right? So you can essentially take CJE and you can install it and make it run in your custom setup. So I just talked about some key capabilities in the product today, but I also want to give you an insight into what is coming. So one of the most important capabilities that I want to draw your attention to is what we're calling as Blue Steel. And we're going to be talking more about these next few capabilities at Jenkins World. So, if you can attend Jenkins World this year, please do. It's going to be great. We're going to be talking about several new capabilities that are coming into the CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise. So with Blue Steel is a complete overhaul of the user experience for the Enterprise Jenkins product. As you can see, this looks nothing like what you're probably used to seeing today, whether on the on the OSS side or on the enterprise side. Blue Steel has taken a lot of concepts from the Blue Ocean project, and I hope many of you have already seen the Blue Ocean project. Blue Ocean project is open source. Blue Ocean again is a reboot of the user experience for Jenkins. So that's on the open source side, and Blue Steel, which is primarily on the enterprise side, Blue Steel borrows several of the concepts from Blue Ocean, and we've baked that into the product right now. So you get a completely different view to the Enterprise Jenkins product right now. It becomes much easier to onboard teams now. There's an administration portal where the shared services team can go in and they can administer and they can configure the product. And basically make it very easy for their customers, the developers, the penny personas, the project admins to come in, onboard users, set up security, create pipelines. All of that becomes super easy with Blue Steel. And like I said, we'll talk more about this at the Jenkins World this year. So this is another screenshot that just kind of shows you how easy it is to create your pipelines, to view your pipelines. You can favorite your pipelines, and this, this view essentially is exactly what you would see in Blue Ocean as well, right? So in the previous screen, with Blue Steel, borrows several of the concepts from Blue Ocean, like I said. So you would essentially start with this view here where you can start to onboard teams, you can onboard users, you can start to create your pipelines, and then you get into this view where, again, this is familiar to you if you've used Blue Ocean before. You can start to favorite your pipelines, you can see the status of them, you can drill into what's happening inside of a pipeline and all that good stuff, right? Another really important capability that we're going to introduce in the product is what we're calling as config as code. This is going to be very, very useful for the shared services persona again. This would allow you to essentially templatize or to essentially configure your masters as code. You no longer have to go to the UI and fill out a whole bunch of fields for you to configure your master. You can essentially now, put up, come up with a file. You can configure. You could say what plugins you want in that master. You can set up security realms, and you can essentially, do a whole bunch of stuff for your masters. And you can check that into your GitHub repo, and you can essentially have your, project level teams kind of, they can essentially inherit this template, and they can customize masters for their own project needs, right? So this is a very, cool capability that's going to be coming very soon. And then finally, another, for us, I kind of see this as a game-changing capability for Enterprise Jenkins. We're very soon, again, we're going to talk about this at Jenkins World. This capability, we're calling this Delivery Insights. The main goal around Delivery Insights is to provide practical, meaningful, and actionable insights, right, for different personas, right? So they want to see, hey, I've set up this, shared, CD as a service cluster. I've got a whole bunch of users using it. I want to measure the effectiveness of the solution. Or if my teams are running into problems, I want to be able to find the root cause. And I want the product to provide, to recommend solutions to me, right? So that I can, take action and, I can achieve my DevOps goals, right? So this insights, capability is going to be really, really game changing. And that's also something we'll talk about at Jenkins World coming up. So some of the key problems that, some of the typical problems, I should say, that we'll solve for is, like what you see here, right? So you've got the developer persona, she's checked in a fix, she submitted it yesterday, she knows that it works on her machine, and the QA team wants to know when they can test it, and basically the QA person is coming and asking the developer, hey, you checked it in yesterday, why is that not showing up on my staging environment? Where is your check-in? What stage of the pipeline is your check-in right now? Or it could be a problem like this, right? So you've got the Eng manager who is looking at, at the pipeline, and he sees that, the staging environment, the tests running on the staging environment are failing, and he wants to know why, right? Why are they failing? How can, his team essentially, what kind of changes do they need to make to essentially unblock themselves and go to market faster. And there's a few more problems here that I've called out. So the whole point around this is delivery insights is going to be very crucial for an enterprise to understand how they're doing from a from a CI/CD perspective. We want to provide those insights to to enterprises so that they can take action, right? So I've reached a stage in my webinar where I want to do a quick demo. I'm going to, just kind of very quickly call out some key capabilities, and I will start with a cluster that I created yesterday. And, this cluster is running on AWS right now. This is the CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise Cluster. I had created a test master here yesterday just to play with it. But what I want to show you is once you have it took me 15 minutes essentially to set up this cluster. So again, if you're a shared services team member and you want to set up a scalable enterprise Jenkins cluster, it's super easy, right? You go into your terminal, you download the product, you fire up the CLI, you run a command, and within 15 minutes or so you can be up and running, right? So once you've got the cluster up and running, this is the Jenkins Operations Center that's baked into the product, right? So once the cluster comes up, you would log into the Operations Center, and then from this point it becomes really easy to onboard new teams, and you can start with this new master button. You can just click that new master button, and let's give that a name. So let's say this is I'm just giving that a name, and I'm going to hit go, and that's going to get me into a config screen for your master. And again, some of these configurations will start to get moved into the config as code capability that I just talked about, right? So you can actually configure your masters using that new feature that's going to be introduced in CJE very soon. But here I'm just going to leave all the default configs as is. You can see that this master is using a Docker image. Again, these are default Docker images that get shipped in the product. You could use your own. You don't need to use this, but I'm just going to leave everything the way it is. I'm going to hit save, and you can see that your master is getting provisioned. So a Docker container now is getting provisioned for you running your master. And you can see that in these in the logs here, you can see that a container is actually getting provisioned. So this will take about a minute or so. So in the meantime, what I want to show you is some of the other capabilities that are in the product today. So if I go to this all view here, you can see all the inbuilt, or I should say the default Docker images that that come out of the box for you, right? So and it's like, for example, these Maven JDK 7, Maven JDK 8. These are your for your Jenkins agents, if you will, right? So if you want to spin up a Jenkins agent and say you're running a Maven job and you're dependent on JDK 7, well, you could use this agent template that comes out of the box, or you could create your own, right? You could go to new item and you could essentially create your own agent template, if you will, right? So the other key capability is as you can see, there's inbuilt monitoring that is present in the product. You can see here that the master that I provisioned yesterday is healthy, it's sunny. You can see all the health checks passed. There are no failed plugins. The disk space looks healthy. The connection to the operations center looks good. So everything is great, right? And by the way, this new master that I just provisioned is up and running, right? So you can see that in just about a minute or so, your master is good to go, right? So so I just showed you the Docker templates, right? So I showed you what comes out of the box. You could certainly go and create your own Docker template here as well, for your agents if you want, right? You could do that. So what I want to show next are these analytics components that are in the product right now. So you can get insights into how your builds are performing. There's a whole bunch of canned reports, if you will, or canned dashboards here. You can see your build runtimes, queue times, node performance, and then you can see performance analytics. This one kind of shows you how your masters are performing, the JVM stats, for example, for your masters and for your JOC component, right? So there's a whole bunch of metrics here that you can take a look at. So I'm going to go back into the masters tab here, and I'm going to get into this new master. And so this is basically running off of the new Jenkins 2.x line, if you will, right? So if I click on that, I'm going to be presented with this wizard screen that's going to show you, like, okay, you can essentially install the suggested plugins from CloudBees. or you could even choose the type of plugins that you want, right? So let's go with the suggested plugins. This is going to take, about a minute, maybe less than a minute essentially to get done. And while this is complete, you can see all the plugins that are getting downloaded here, right? And boom, there you go. Super fast, very easy to essentially set up a master. You can, like I said, you could go with the recommended plugins from CloudBees and they get installed really, really fast, right? So once we have provisioned the master, what I want to show you next is how easy it is to essentially provision agents on demand. And for that, what I want to do is I want to essentially take I want to create a pipeline job, if you will, and a specific one at that, and I'll explain. So you can see I've created some test ones here. Let's say I want to do this, right? So I want to create a multi-branch pipeline, and as you can see here, it creates a set of pipeline projects according to detected branches in an SEM repository. So what that means is you can essentially, so let's say you are an enterprise, you've got a development team that wants to start using CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise, and this development team has a whole bunch of developers, and they're working on multiple features, and maybe a common practice that they're following is each feature has its own feature branch, right? So you've got developers checking in code and checking in features in each of these branches, and you want to create a CD pipeline for each of those branches, right? So that's what this multi-branch pipeline will let you do. And so once you've created a feature branch, all you would need to do as a developer is to add a Jenkins file, right? Your pipeline is code, essentially. You would create a Jenkins file in each of those feature branches, and you would come in here to JOC, and you can essentially then create this multi-branch pipeline job, right? You give it a name, and then you hit OK. And after this, it's really cool what after this point, right? So once you've done that, you would get into this config screen, and I'll show you in a second. What you need to do here is you need to add a source. Your source, let's say here is GitHub, is what we're using, and you want to give that you want to give it an owner name. So here, CloudBees is my owner name. You want to talk about credentials. Oh, okay. Sorry. Let me go back up. I will go back. I haven't set credentials for this new master, so I don't want to bore you. Let me go back into this guy and start over. I will give this a new name. And start over. I apologize. I didn't set up credentials for the other master here, but this master is good to go. So you give that a name. You essentially say, so you need credentials. These are your GitHub credentials. So I've basically added my credentials beforehand in this master to connect to GitHub, right? So you need to basically say that, hey, this is Jenkins that's connecting to GitHub, and I'm connecting to a specific repository, which is this guy here. So this is a demo, repository that we've created, and just to kind of demo this multi-branch, pipeline job, if you will, right? So once you've kind of entered all of this information here, let me just quickly see if everything looks good. Yep, looks fine. I'm going to hit save here, and what's going to happen is it's going to scan your repository, all the branches, and it's going to create, set up, pipelines for you, right? So let's see. So you can see here that it is starting to provision. So what it's done is it's pulled in your, let's go back here to this job here. So it's scanned all your pipelines, and it's found the Jenkins file in each of these branches. It's provisioned agents, so it's actually starting to run these pipelines already. So you can see that this guy failed for some reason. but it's actually already provisioned. It happened really, really fast. It provisioned executive agents for you on demand, and it ran the pipelines, based on the Jenkins files checked into these different branches, right? And you can see here that CJE also offers you, it also tells you, the capacity you have left, for provisioning agents, right? So this is a really, really important capability for teams to essentially get started, very, very quickly, right? So it was as simple as what I did was, again, just to kind of recap, I clicked on new master, I onboarded a new team, I chose the plugins that I needed, and then essentially after that point, I created a multi-branch pipeline job. Again, it scanned my repo, it scanned all the branches, it started to then run the the pipelines. If you had a Jenkins file checked into each of those branches, right? And the agents got provisioned on demand for you, right? So that's a really, again, the whole concept of getting started, getting onboarded, and get running fast is exactly what I wanted to show you in this demo. So with that, I want to stop here. I know I want to get some time for questions as well. So let me get into, there's one poll question that I want to get to. So let's see. That is right there. So
I can go ahead and push that out for you if you'd like, Cal.
Okay.
Oh, there it is. Okay, so the today's polling question is, would you like a free trial of CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise? Simple yes or no question. Go ahead and give the audience a couple seconds to go ahead and submit their answer, and then we'll move on to the question and answer period. Please note that even though we're moving into that period, there is still time to get a question or two in to Cal. So if you do have a question, please feel free to submit it at any time. We will have about 5 minutes or so for questions. We already have a few of them in, so we'll go ahead and close out this poll here, and then we'll go ahead and get to the questions. Okay, Cal, I have a couple really great questions here for you. The first one is from, let's see, from Juan, who asks, where is the boundary between Jenkins and Docker? He's asking if you could just kind of elaborate a little bit on the interface.
I want to make sure I understood the question right. So boundary between Jenkins and Docker. So I'm going to do my best to answer that based on how I've understood it. So you can essentially create a Docker image for your Jenkins master or your Jenkins agent. So your master component essentially is running inside of our Docker container, right? So that the Jenkins master process, if you will, essentially is running inside of a Docker container now. And once that master comes up, you can then start to use it just like you would use Jenkins today. You could download the plugins that you are used to using today. So there's no, for you as the end user, it's going to be very transparent to you. Today, if you're installing a Jenkins master, you're installing it on some hardware, on a machine. Now in CJE, that master just happens to run inside of a Docker container. That's about it. But it's transparent to you as an end user. So again, I don't know if that answered your question, but I've done the best I could based on that, how I've understood it.
Okay. All right. Great. Let's go ahead and move on to the next question then. Fabrizio is asking, do you or can you provide some script for failover architecture such as CloudFormation to play with it on the cloud?
Okay, so CJE actually out of the box provides failover capabilities, like I said. So if you're running it on, say, AWS, there are multiple failover capabilities that the product already provides today, out of the box. Like if you're, like I said, if you're master Docker container dies, the product automatically, will spin up another container for you, and then your workload from your previous master gets moved to the new one. Or let's say you're running it on AWS, and again, say you've set up the cluster in a multiple availability zone kind of setup. If one AZ were to go down, the product will automatically move your workload from that failed AZ, if you will, to the online AZs, right? So there's capabilities in the product that can automatically do these failover scenarios for you.
Okay, great. Next question is from Dan, who asks, roughly what percentage of the Jenkins plugins are included in the curated set supported by CJE?
Yeah, so good question. So right now we're over, I think we were at 137 curated plugins. Maybe that list has grown. I haven't checked lately. And again, the key point there is with the CAP program, CloudBees curates, a list of plugins and ensures that those plugins are compatible with new versions of the product that get shipped on a regular basis, right? And that list of plugins today, like I said, I think we're close to 140, and that list is going to grow. And this list of plugins is based on what we see out in the wild, right? So the most commonly used plugins is what we are including in this curated set.
Okay, great. I think we have time for one or two more questions. We have a question here from Christoph, who asks, how are secrets such as private SSH keys from my private Git repositories handled?
Right. So you've got, you can essentially store some of your secrets like your GitHub credentials by going into the JOC. Given that I didn't have too much time, I couldn't show you how to do that. But feel free to reach out to a representative from CloudBees, and I'm happy to show you how to get that done.
Okay, great. Okay, let's see. The next question is from Bhadresh, who asks, can plugins be downloaded offline, meaning no internet connectivity from CBJOC, and easily imported in CBJOC? So will it also download dependent plugins?
I believe the answer is yes. Where I don't want to give you the wrong answer. This is one where I want to get back to you on this one. I know that the plugins that what I showed during the demo, we actually bundle the plugins in the product, so it is quote unquote offline, in that manner, right? So when you create a master, when you saw the screen to install the plugins, those are actually bundled in the product. So we're not actually reaching out over the internet to pull all those plugins in. So that is, that was done precisely to support the offline model. Now, whether you can pull any plugin in this offline model, I will have to get back to you on that. We can take a note and we can ask the, I'll get back to you. Okay,
great. Yes, please note that anybody who's submitted a question and it's not answered during the webinar, we do have a running list of all these questions, so I'm sure Cal will be able to follow up with you guys afterwards. And I think we have time for one more quick question. It's another one from Fabrizio, who asks, does CloudBees support K8s or Mesos or Portainer/Swarm architectures for CJE infrastructure plugins?
The answer is yes. I didn't talk about this in our upcoming capabilities, but very soon we're going to have the ability to support an external container management layer, and our first supported platform, if you will be Kubernetes. So if you've already got an existing Kubernetes cluster running, CJE will be able to support that. And again, that is something that the team is working on right now, and we should be able to have that over the next few months, actually. So we're actually close. Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Well, that will end then the question and answer part of the webinar, and just leaves it for me to say thank you so much to our presenter today, Cal Vissa, Senior Product Manager at CloudBees. Great information. I'm sure the audience got a ton of information out of it, good information. And I would like to encourage the audience to please check on DevOps.com for future webinars. And then also check back on the website for a link to this webinar on demand after about 24 hours. Again, this is Charlene O'Hanlon. I'm the moderator for today's event, and I wish you well. Thank you.